In the high chamber of Jerusalem, the air was thick with incense and dread. Torches burned along the cedar walls. Guards stood like statues at the edges of the great hall, and in the center of the room, on the cold polished stone, two women stood face to face. Between them, wrapped in cloth still damp from the night, lay a single living infant, and behind them, just out of view, lay another bundle. This one did not move. This one would never move again. The young king on the throne was barely past his coronation. His beard was still growing in. His hands had not yet learned the weight of the scepter he was holding. His name was Solomon, son of David, son of Bathsheba. And what he was about to do in the next 60 seconds would echo through 3,000 years of human history, because the verdict he was about to deliver would not come from law. It would not come from precedent. It would not come from any court that had ever existed before. It would come from a place no human judge had ever reached. It would come from heaven itself. This is the story of the most famous trial in the ancient world. Two women, one living child, one dead child, and a king so young, so untested, that the entire nation of Israel was secretly wondering if he could even hold the throne his father had left him. This is the day everything changed. This is the day a kingdom learned that the boy on the throne was carrying something supernatural inside him. And this is the day a single command, 3 words spoken without flinching, exposed the truth that no court in history had ever managed to uncover. Tonight, the courtroom of Solomon opens again, and every viewer is about to sit in the jury to understand what happened in that throne room. The story has to rewind, because Solomon did not arrive at this moment by accident. He arrived at it through grief, through fear, and through one of the strangest encounters with God ever recorded in the Hebrew Scriptures. The kingdom of Israel that Solomon had inherited was not a peaceful place. His father David had unified the tribes through war. He had crushed the Philistines. He had taken Jerusalem from the Jebusites and made it the capital. He had built a dynasty out of blood and prayer in equal measure. And when David died, the throne did not pass smoothly. There had been rivals. There had been plots. Solomon's older brother Adonijah had tried to seize the crown while David was on his deathbed. There had been executions in the early days of Solomon's reign. Joab, the legendary general of David's army, had been struck down at the altar where he tried to seek refuge. Shimei, an old enemy of the family, had been put to death for breaking his oath. Solomon had inherited a throne soaked in the politics of survival, and he knew it. He was young. The Bible suggests he may have been only around 20 years old when he became king. Some Jewish traditions place him even younger, and he was sitting on a throne that had been built by a warrior, surrounded by advisors who had served under that warrior, in a kingdom that expected him to be exactly like his father. But Solomon was not his father. Solomon had not grown up on battlefields. Solomon had grown up in the palace with scrolls and scribes and music and poetry. He was a thinker. He was a builder. He was a man who saw the world through patterns and questions, not swords and shields. And he knew, in the deepest part of his soul, that he was not ready for what God had placed on his shoulders. So he did something his father had taught him to do. He went to worship. He traveled to a place called Gibeon, about 6 miles northwest of Jerusalem. Gibeon was the high place where the tabernacle of Moses had been kept for generations. It was an ancient, sacred site, the kind of place where the air itself felt heavy with memory. Solomon climbed up to that high place. And what he did when he arrived was so excessive, so reckless, so wildly out of proportion to anything any king had done before, that the chronicler who recorded it could barely believe his own pen. Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings. 1,000, not 10, not 100. 1,000 animals burning before the Lord in a single ceremony. The smoke rose for days. The smell carried for miles. The sky over Gibeon turned black with the offerings of a young king who was desperately trying to tell God something he could not put into words. He was saying, "I have nothing. I am nothing. I am a child standing in the shadow of giants, and I can't do this without you. Take everything I have. Take all of it. Take more than you asked for. Take more than the law requires. Just please, please be with me." And when the fires finally died down and Solomon laid his head on the ground that night, exhausted, smoke still in his hair, something happened that the Bible records with chilling simplicity. God appeared to him in a dream, and God asked him a question that no human being should ever have to answer cold. Ask what I shall give you. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who had split seas and toppled walls, the God who had appeared to Moses in fire and to Elijah in a whisper, looked at this young king and offered him anything: wealth, power, long life, the destruction of his enemies. Anything a king could ever want was sitting on the table, and all Solomon had to do was name it. And Solomon, somehow, did not ask for any of those things. He told God the truth. He said he was a little child who did not know how to go out or come in. He said the people God had given him were too many to count. He said the burden was too heavy. And then he asked for one thing: not riches, not victory, not safety. He asked for a listening heart. He asked for the wisdom to discern between good and evil. He asked for the ability to judge a people he could not even number. The Bible says God was pleased, so pleased that he gave Solomon what he asked for, and then poured everything else on top of it as a bonus. Wealth he had not asked for. Honor he had not asked for. A wisdom so deep, the text says, that no one before him and no one after him would ever match it. God promised that the world itself would marvel at the mind of this young king. Solomon woke up, and here is the part nobody talks about. Solomon woke up, and he had no proof. None. The dream was real to him. The encounter was real to him. He could still feel the weight of God's voice in his chest. But how does a young king walk into a palace full of generals, priests, advisors, and political enemies and tell them that God just downloaded supernatural wisdom into his soul? How does he prove it? How does he show it? In the ancient world, claims like that were a dime a dozen. Every prophet, every mystic, every charlatan from Egypt to Babylon claimed to hear from the gods. The court of Pharaoh was full of magicians who said the same things. The priests of Baal in the north claimed visions every other week. Solomon needed something more than a story. He needed a moment. He needed a test. He needed a case so impossible, so brutal, so beyond human reasoning that when he solved it, no one in Israel would ever doubt again. He did not have to wait long, because somewhere in the lower city of Jerusalem, in a house most respectable people would never enter, two women were about to walk into the worst night of their lives. The Bible is blunt about who they were. It does not soften it. It does not hide it. They were prostitutes. Two women living in the same house, on the margins of society, with no husbands, no protectors, no families standing behind them. In the ancient world, women like that had no legal rights worth speaking of. They could not testify in most courts. They could not own property. They could not appeal to the elders of their cities. They were invisible. They were disposable. They were the kind of people no king would ever bother to see. And ancient Jewish traditions preserved in the Midrash add another layer that most people never hear. Some rabbinic sources suggest these two women were not strangers at all. Some traditions hint they were connected by marriage, by family, by a long and bitter rivalry that had been festering for years before that night. There are commentators who believe the case was much more politically charged than it appears on the surface, and that the dispute over the baby was the final eruption of a feud that had been burning for a long time. Whether that tradition is right or not, one thing is certain. These two women hated each other long before the baby was born, and now both of them were about to give birth within days of each other under the same roof. The first woman gave birth. Then, just 3 days later, the second woman gave birth. 2 boys, 2 infants, 2 mothers in the same house with no one else around. No midwife, no witnesses, no husbands, no family. Just 2 women, 2 newborns, and a darkness that was about to swallow one of them whole. It happened in the middle of the night. One of the women rolled over in her sleep, and her body crushed her own son. By the time she woke up, the child was dead. Stillborn silence, no cry, no movement, nothing. And in that moment, in the panic, in the horror, in the unbearable grief of a mother who had just killed her own child by accident, something inside her broke. Something cold and calculating took over. She got up. She walked across the room. She lifted the other woman's living son out of his mother's arms while that mother was still sleeping, and she laid her own dead child in his place. Then she went back to bed and waited for morning. Think about what that took. Think about the kind of darkness it takes to walk across a room in the middle of the night, holding the cold body of your own child, and place him into the arms of a sleeping woman so she will wake up to the same horror you just experienced. Think about lying back down in bed, knowing what you have done, and waiting for the screams. There is something about that scene that is almost impossible to read without flinching. It is the kind of moment that exposes how deep the human heart can fall when grief and pride and rage all collapse into 1 second. When the second woman woke up to nurse her baby, she felt the cold body. She felt the stillness, and in the dim light of dawn, she screamed. But then she looked closer. She looked at the dead infant's face, and her heart stopped because she knew. She knew her own son. She knew the shape of his head, the curve of his chin, the lines of his tiny hands. A mother knows. A mother always knows. This was not her baby. This was not her child. Her son was alive, and he was lying in the arms of the woman across the room. The accusation exploded. The screaming, the denials, the fury. 2 women clawing at each other in a room with 2 newborns and no witnesses. And there was no way to prove anything. No DNA, no paternity test, no neutral observer. No judge in the ancient world had ever solved a case like this, because a case like this could not be solved. Not by any normal court, not by any normal king. It was one woman's word against another's, and both of them were screaming the exact same thing. He is mine. The dead one is hers. So they did the only thing they could do. They walked to the palace. They demanded an audience with the king. And somehow, through guards, through gatekeepers, through the layers of bureaucracy that protected royalty from the chaos of the streets. They made it all the way to the throne room of Solomon himself. And the very fact that they got that far should make every viewer pause. Because in the ancient Near East, 2 prostitutes did not get audiences with kings, ever. Whatever spirit was guiding this case, it had already started moving long before they reached the palace gates. And here is where the story becomes something more than a story. Picture the scene. The throne room of Solomon was not a small place. It was vast, cedar columns rising 30 feet into the air, walls overlaid with gold, polished stone floors that reflected the torchlight like dark water, guards lining the walls in rows, foreign dignitaries from Egypt and Phoenicia waiting their turn, scribes at low tables, ready to record every word the king spoke, advisors in silk robes whispering in the corners, the kind of room designed to make ordinary people feel small, the kind of room where empires rose and fell on a single sentence. And into that room walked 2 prostitutes, dragging a living baby and a dead one, screaming accusations at each other in front of the most powerful man in the kingdom. This was not a case any king should have taken. Any normal ruler would have thrown them out. Any normal court would have refused to hear it. There were no witnesses. There was no evidence. There was no possible verdict that would not look arbitrary and cruel. Solomon's advisors must have been horrified. His generals must have been embarrassed. The whole court must have been waiting for the king to wave his hand and make the women disappear. This was the kind of case that made kings look weak. This was the kind of case that ended reigns. But Solomon did not wave his hand. Solomon listened. He let the first woman speak. He let her tell the whole story. The birth, the night, the dead child, the switch. He let her cry. He let her beg. He did not interrupt. He did not roll his eyes. He gave her every second she needed. And then he let the second woman speak. And she told the exact same story in reverse. The accusations were identical. The grief was identical. The fury was identical. Word for word, breath for breath, the 2 stories mirrored each other so perfectly that no human ear could have separated them. When both women finished, the throne room fell silent. Every advisor in the room knew there was no way out. Every scribe knew this case would either embarrass the king or destroy him. Solomon was new on the throne. Solomon was untested. Solomon was a boy who had inherited a kingdom from a legend. And now, in his first major public trial, he was being handed a case that had no solution. The political danger was enormous. If he ruled wrongly, the story would spread through every village in Israel within a week. Within a month, foreign kings would be laughing at him. Within a year, his enemies inside Jerusalem would be using it to undermine him. The young king was standing on the edge of a cliff, and the entire kingdom was watching to see if he would fall. The king sat very still, and then he spoke. His voice was calm, almost casual, almost bored. He looked at the woman on the right, then at the woman on the left, and he said something that no one in that room, not the women, not the guards, not the advisors, had ever heard a king say before. "Bring me a sword." The whole chamber froze. If this story is hitting you right now, if you can feel the weight of what is about to happen in that room, hit subscribe. Because what comes next is the moment that built a kingdom. And it is the moment most people have never truly understood. A guard moved. Footsteps echoed across the polished stone. Somewhere in the chamber, a heavy blade was lifted from a wall and carried forward. The 2 women watched in confusion. The advisors watched in horror, and Solomon, the young king, kept his eyes on the living child on the floor. He did not look at the women. He did not look at the guards. He looked only at the baby. The sword was placed in front of him. He did not touch it. He did not need to. He simply gave the next command. And the next command was the one that broke history in half. Cut the living child in two. Give half to one and half to the other. The room erupted. Imagine it. Imagine standing there. A king has just ordered an infant to be sliced in half. There is no precedent for this. There is no law for this. There is no court in the ancient Near East that has ever issued a verdict like this. The advisors must have been screaming inside. The scribes must have dropped their pens. The guards must have looked at each other, waiting for someone, anyone, to stop the madness. The dignitaries from foreign lands must have been calculating in real time whether the rumors about this new king of Israel were true, whether he was wise, or whether he was insane, or whether the line between the two had simply collapsed in front of them. And the two women who had walked into that room as enemies, were about to reveal who they really were. One of them nodded. She actually nodded. The Bible records it almost casually, but the horror of it is unmistakable. The woman who had stolen the baby looked at the king and said, in essence, "Yes, do it. Let it be neither mine nor yours. Divide it." She was willing. She was willing to watch a child die rather than admit she had lost the argument. Her hatred for the other woman was so deep, her need to win so total, that she would rather see the baby cut to pieces than see her rival walk out with him alive. There is something almost demonic about that response. There is something so far beyond human reason that it tells you exactly what kind of soul she was carrying that day. But the other woman fell apart. She threw herself toward the king. The Bible says her compassion yearned for her son. The Hebrew word is brutal. It describes a kind of inner burning, a physical agony that erupts in the gut of a mother who is watching her child about to die. It is the same word used in other passages to describe the love of God for His own people, a love so deep it physically tears the body apart from the inside. And she screamed the words that would become the most famous courtroom confession in human history. "Oh my Lord, give her the living child. By no means kill it." She was willing to lose. She was willing to let her enemy walk out of that throne room with her baby in her arms forever. As long as the baby was alive, she would give up everything: her child, her name, her justice, her future, everything. As long as he lived, she would never see him again. She would never hold him again. She would never hear him call her mother. But he would be alive, and that was enough. And in that moment, Solomon saw it. Of course he saw it. The whole room saw it, because no woman who had stolen a child would ever surrender him to save him, and no real mother would ever let her child be cut in half to win an argument. The truth had revealed itself the instant the sword was named. Solomon had not solved the case with logic. He had not solved it with evidence. He had solved it by reaching into the deepest place in the human heart and pulling out the one thing that cannot be faked: a real mother's love. He raised his hand. He looked at the guard, and he said the words that ended the trial forever. "Give the living child to the first woman. She is the mother." The throne room exhaled. The guards lowered the sword. The dead child was carried away. And the real mother, the woman who had been willing to lose everything to save her son, gathered her baby into her arms and walked out of that palace into a kingdom that would never see her again. Her name is not recorded. Her face is not remembered. But her decision became one of the most quoted moments in the entire Bible, because what she did in that room was a picture of something bigger than herself. It was a picture of a love that would rather lose than destroy, a love that would rather suffer than win at the cost of the beloved, a love that the prophets would later say belongs only to God Himself. And Solomon, young, untested, brand new on the throne, Solomon had just done something no human court in history had ever done. He had not weighed evidence. He had not interrogated witnesses. He had not consulted his advisors. He had reached into the human heart with surgical precision and pulled the truth out by force. And the entire kingdom of Israel knew in that instant that the rumors were true. The dream at Gibeon was real. The wisdom God had promised was real. The boy on the throne was carrying something that did not come from this world. The historian Josephus, writing nearly 1,000 years later in his great work known as the Antiquities of the Jews, described what happened next. He said the news of the verdict spread through Israel like fire through dry grass. Within days, every village, every household, every market in the kingdom was talking about the young king who had outwitted 2 liars by threatening to cut a baby in half. And the reaction, Josephus tells us, was not amusement. It was not admiration. The reaction was fear, a holy fear, a reverent dread, because the people understood what they were watching. They were watching a man who could see things they could not see. They were watching a king who had been touched by God in a way that no king before him had ever been touched. Josephus wrote that from that day on, the Israelites looked upon Solomon as one whose mind had been visited by the divine. The Bible records it in one sentence. And all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. That sentence changed everything, because from that day forward, Solomon was not just the son of David. He was the wisest man on earth. Kings traveled from distant lands just to ask him questions. The Queen of Sheba would later cross deserts and oceans to test him with riddles, and she would leave breathless, saying the half had not been told her. 3,000 proverbs would flow from his mouth, 1,005 songs, books that still sit in the Bible today. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, the Song of Songs, all carry the fingerprints of the wisdom that God poured into him after 1,000 burnt offerings and a single humble prayer. He would build the temple his father David had only dreamed of. He would expand Israel's borders to their greatest extent in history. He would rule for 40 years over a kingdom that knew peace, prosperity, and a level of spiritual clarity it had never known before and would never know again. And it all began with a sword that was never used. But here is the part most people miss. The verdict was not really about the baby. It was not really about the 2 women. It was not even really about Solomon. The verdict was about a God who answers prayers in ways no one expects. A God who takes a young king's request for wisdom and proves it through a case so impossible that only heaven could solve it. A God who hides his power inside ordinary men and reveals it in moments no one sees coming. A God who is always doing more than the human eye can see, always weaving a story bigger than the one playing out on the surface. And there is one more detail, one more layer that almost no one talks about. 1,000 years after Solomon sat on that throne, another teacher would walk through the dusty streets of Israel. He would heal the sick. He would raise the dead. He would speak in parables that cut through the human heart like that ancient sword cut through the silence of the throne room. And one day, when a crowd of religious leaders demanded a sign from him, he would look at them and say a sentence that would echo back through 1,000 years of history. He would say, "The Queen of the South will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, a greater than Solomon is here, a greater than Solomon, greater than the king who solved the unsolvable case, greater than the man who could read the human heart with one command, greater than the wisest ruler who had ever lived." The man who said those words was Jesus of Nazareth, and the wisdom he carried did not come from a dream in Gibeon. It came from the throne of heaven itself, because he was the throne of heaven walking on human feet. Solomon judged 2 women with a sword. Jesus would judge the entire world with a cross. Solomon revealed the truth of one mother's heart. Jesus would reveal the truth of every heart that has ever lived. Solomon was given wisdom. Jesus was wisdom. And every time the story of the 2 women and the baby is told, somewhere in the background, there is an echo of something even greater, an echo of a love that would rather lose than destroy, an echo of a parent who would give up everything to save the child, an echo of a God who, when the moment came, did not raise a sword over his own son to test the world. He laid the sword down, and he let the world raise it instead. That is the deeper meaning hiding inside the most famous trial in the ancient world. That is why this story has survived for 3,000 years. Not because it was clever, not because it was shocking, but because it pointed forward to something the human heart has been longing for since the beginning of time. A judge who knows the truth before a single word is spoken. A king who rules with a wisdom that does not come from this world. A love that would rather die than let the child be destroyed. The 2 women who walked into that throne room never knew they were standing in the middle of a prophecy. They never knew their grief and their lies and their love were being woven into a story that would still be told 3,000 years later in languages they could not have imagined, in countries they had never heard of, by people who would weep at the wisdom of a king they would never meet. They walked in as nameless, faceless, forgotten women on the margins of an ancient society, and they walked out as eternal characters in the greatest story ever told. The real mother walked home that day with her son in her arms. The Bible never tells us what happened to her after that. We do not know if she changed her life. We do not know if she ever told her son the story of the day his mother was willing to lose him to save him. But somewhere in Israel, for the rest of her days, there was a woman who knew, a woman who had stood before a king and seen the wisdom of God look back at her through human eyes. A woman who had been one command away from losing everything, and who had been saved by the only judge in history who could see straight through to her soul. And the other woman, the one who had nodded, the one who had been willing to watch a child die rather than admit she was wrong. The Bible does not tell us what happened to her either, but there is something terrifying about her silence at the end of the story, because the same wisdom that saved the real mother had also exposed the false one. And exposure in the presence of a king like Solomon was a kind of judgment all its own. 2 women walked into a throne room in Jerusalem. One walked out with her baby in her arms. The other walked out into a darkness she had built with her own hands, and the kingdom that watched it happen never forgot what they saw that day, because the boy on the throne had become a king, and the King of Kings was still 1,000 years away.